Hello, so today we are going to do some leaf printing and make a card similar to this one really. There's different options depending on how you want to use your leaf prints and what you want to print them on. That's another one. I've yet to mount these on cards, but you get the idea. This one is on book pages. This one is just on plain card with the archival ink, so it is permanent and waterproof, and then I've added the colour later. You could sponge it on, you can dip it, you can do whatever you want. So to start with, what we need is some leaves. This is just a selection out of my garden. There's all sorts of things. When you're looking for leaves, what you need to look for is this, the veins. They need to be quite prominent. This one is a type of geranium, I think it is. No. Anyway, it's got quite prominent veins, as you can see. I tend to use the backs of the leaves because they're more prominent. As you can see, you'd get a different print from the front. This one does quite nicely. It's got a strong vein down the middle and then more veins there. This one is a Weigela. I think that's how you pronounce it. And it's got quite strong veins. Bay leaf, not quite as strong, but quite a sturdy leaf. This is a Buddleia. Now the Buddleias do very, very well because they've got quite a strong vein structure. Ivy does very well. What I found with ivy is you need to use the front because the veins are more prominent on the front than they are on the back. Another Weigela leaf, a little bit bigger, as you can see, prominent veins. So that's what you're looking for, is the veins. I haven't done a dandelion leaf before, but I'm going to give it a go because that's quite an interesting shape. What you need is leaves that are nice and clean, no sort of mud or muck on them. It doesn't matter actually if once you've picked them they start to flag. That makes no difference at all. So we've chosen our leaves. I'll just move them out of the way. Now I'm working on a sheet of laminated paper because then it just wipes off, any ink will just wipe off. That's for my backgrounds. When I'm actually inking the leaves up, I put scrap paper because your ink pad is actually going to go over the edges of your leaf. So this will stop your table and everything from getting dirty. You need an acrylic block or something that you can press down with that's an even thickness and flat. I'll just to set off with do some printing just on a plain piece. This is copier paper, but it's a bit heavier than normal copier paper. It's about, I think, 160, 180 GSM. So that's the paper I'm going to use. So what I do is have my paper partly on my scrap, my leaf with the veins uppermost. Now you will get very mucky hands unless you want to use gloves or a pair of tweezers. I don't mind getting messy hands. So the flat of your ink pad, and you just press it down really, really well onto your leaf, and you will see the leaf will pick up all the ink on the veins. Some other bits as well, but mostly the veins because they're the raised bit. A bit like a rubber stamp, the raised bit picks up the ink. You'll notice this one had a stem which actually stuck up and got in the way, so I took it off. Most of the stems I've taken off because they get in the way. Now you've got to be fairly quick with this because your ink will dry up, but because you're going on to organic matter which isn't porous particularly, you've got a certain length of time. So if I just move that over there, I'm on a flat surface, put my leaf down onto the paper that I want to print. Make sure your acrylic block completely covers your leaf and press jolly hard all the way around, making sure you go into the middle, the edges, everywhere. And you'll hear a faint crunching noise. That is the leaf being compressed. And when it's a soft leaf, that's what you want to hear. You'll get a better print. So then, basically, again, you just take it off. And that is your first leaf print. That's a reasonably good one. I could have had a bit more ink on there. So I'll do another one. So we'll go on to our scrap paper again. In fact, we'll do a different leaf to show you. A Weigela leaf. Make sure in between inking up you put the lid on your ink pad so that it doesn't dry up, because in this hot weather they do dry up quite quickly. I turn the leaf round and I'm on my scrap paper, so it's protecting my desk and everything. When you get long leaves like this, you'll find that the end nearest the stem will resist. It'll have a bit more bounce, so the ink won't go on as easily. So you make sure you've got a good coverage. You can see it's well and truly covered. Again, we're going on a flat surface, going to go on our paper, and then we're just going to press down. Just going to move that sample out of the way. Really, really, really good. Press all the way to the end, in the middle, everywhere. Again, quite a nice print. You can use archival ink, you can use memento ink. It doesn't really matter, both works. Put that leaf out of the way and I'll show you this one, which is a buddleia leaf. Again on our scrap, so sometimes you do just have to hang on to the end of the leaf so that it doesn't move about and get attached to your ink pad. You do waste a little bit of ink because you're going over the edges of the leaves onto your scrap paper, but it doesn't really matter. It's only a little bit of ink. Make sure you put your lid on. This one will go there. Right, and again, all your leaves covered, and you're going to press down. You make sure that you're on a completely flat surface, nothing underneath, because if you get ridges underneath, it won't print where the ridges are. That's a really nice strong one. You have got a bit of ink on here, you can put your leaves, see if you can gather a bit of that ink up. And you do actually sometimes get a second print with a leaf, even if it's been a little while since you put the ink on. This is the Weigela one, and I'll just do it here so you can see if we get a second print or not. You might get a faint one, but we might be able to use it. It's very, very faint, so I wouldn't use that one. It was a trial. I'll do the dandelion one just to see how it goes. It's quite a nice shape, is the dandelion. Where you have bits at the side that aren't taking the ink, you might have to go with the edges of your ink pad to try and get a bit more ink further in at the side of your vein. That's quite a strong, prominent vein. I don't know how this one will do, but we'll have a go. No, haven't moved that enough out of the way. I've got a bit of a... Right, on a flat surface again, and we'll press. It might be quite a black one, this. We might get quite a good image. It might be quite strong. Now I can feel my table has got a ledge underneath there, so it's not going. I'll just move it out away from the ledge. Not so great. So you'll see, I thought that was going to be a good leaf to do. No good, so we'll get rid of that one. It's only a weed, is that one. So we've got a few different prints. What we can then do is, because this is waterproof ink, you can colour those with watercolour pencils. You can just cut them out and ink them up with a blending tool, with a brush. You can even just leave them white, have a black background with white leaves on, whatever you wish to do with them. This one has been done, same idea, but just on book pages. That looks rather nice for a change. This one was this idea, and then I put a little bit of my Distress ink on my mat and inked it up. So that's how you get your prints. You can also do your prints if you've got a piece of ready coloured paper. You can do them direct onto here. Absolutely fine, then cut them out or use it as a background, whatever you wish. I'll show you how to do the background in the next part of the video. Right, this is the second part of the leaf printing video, and we're going to create a background. So I've got this piece of laminated paper. You could use a glass mat, you can use whatever. Squidge a little bit of ink, this is just Distress ink, not a vast amount on. Spray it with water, just a little bit, just to hydrate it. And this is the paper, just copy a paper but a bit thicker, that I'm going to use as my background. And you're going to dab and twist and turn till you get bits and pieces of ink on your background. You want random effects. You can drag it across, you can dip it. If you look to see where your blank areas are, and then just keep going backwards and forwards over it, so you get a random background. Say like that. If you've got a second colour, you can wipe this off. Another option, if you haven't got a mat, is to squidge a little bit of ink onto an acrylic block. This is if you haven't got a glass mat. On a surface that doesn't matter if you get ink on it, you've got your hydrated ink, you can splash it about, you can squidge it in and just get ink onto your background from your acrylic block. Doesn't matter if it looks perfect or not, because it's just a background. This is actually Distress Oxides and Distress ink. You can also, that's still slightly wet, is my acrylic block. Little bit, don't do a square. A little bit of ink on there. This is the vintage photo. And then you can randomly just dab it on, and you get a bit darker effect and more mottled effect, so that it picks it up in areas and it's more intense. Once you've got to that stage, and you could do this with just one colour, you can then sprinkle a bit of water, and that will make extra marks. If you've got a heat gun, and heat it up and dry it with your heat gun. Or you can just leave it out in the sun to dry. It'll dry quite quickly in the sun. You'll get a different effect drying with a heat gun than you will leaving it out in the sun, just slightly, because it pushes the pigment to the edges of the puddles, so then you'll get a different effect. It's just totally random, doesn't matter what you get, it's just interest in the background. So can you see where it's reacting with and drying the inks? You're getting a little bit of an outside edge of pigment, like this bit here, and that bit there, with a paler bit in the middle. I won't make you watch me drying that forever and a day, but you get the idea. You can also, if you want to speed it up and you think it's nearly there, dab another piece of paper on the top, and that will pick up some of the ink and dry it off a little bit. So you've got what you would think was a not very interesting background there. It's nice, but it's just a bit boring. But then if you think that that is the type of thing that this was, by the time you've added your strips of paper, your sentiment and your leaf printed onto book pages, that on a card will look really nice. This one was a couple of colours, well actually 3 colours. It was broken china, bundled sage and vintage photo. And I just did a similar thing but just built up the layers. Then these are our leaf prints, and what I've done is I've just coloured them with vintage photo by basically putting the vintage photo on the mat, hydrating it with a bit of water, dipping the cut out leaves in it and drying them. Because I'd already cut them out, I could see where I wanted it to go. It was easier. And then just a sentiment. This one is this going on a card. I'll have some little bits at the edge left over which aren't as dark. That's what these are, the leftover bits. I don't waste anything. So the leftover bits here have made the leaves. But this is the quite darker base bit. I could add more ink, but I quite like that as it is. So basically, and then that's music paper and a sentiment. So that's creating your background. Right, we're going to print onto this base, this background. We've added distress inks with water, we've squidged, we've splashed. I have actually inked the edges just to make the design better. So now we are going to add some of the leaf stamps to there. These are the leaf that I printed earlier. I then coloured them just with some vintage photo, watered down. That one was done on some scrap card, which is the edges of this that I cut away. So I printed onto that. That's made a bit paler leaf. This one, if you remember, was the dandelion, which wasn't a very good print. But it's not a fail because this bit is okay. So what I did is I cut that bit off and coloured that. This bit's no good, but that bit is. And that can go at an edge coming in. So that would be fine. That's just onto book page, music pages. That's an ivy leaf. And this is another one of the leaves that I've done. So we'll set those aside for now. And I'll do some printing onto this background. So I think I'll use the same leaves that I did before. So it doesn't matter that they've wilted because they just go flatter actually, which makes it a little bit easier. So I'm inking all the leaf up, making sure it gets onto all the bits. I've got a little bit of a dark bit there, doesn't matter. Nothing is ever perfect. So I'm going to put that one just coming in there. I'm going to go slightly off so that it looks as if it's joined to the edge. And then again, press down really, really hard as you can, to get a good print. There we are, that's a really nice print. Now this has got quite a lot of ink on, so because this is going to be a background, I am actually going to turn this round and try going again with just a smaller portion. It could probably be a fainter print, but it doesn't matter. There's still this one, this type of leaf, this buddleia leaf, actually takes the ink really well. And that's paler, but it doesn't matter. Let's clean the ink off there before it dries. Alright, so we'll get rid of that leaf. We'll have a Weigela leaf now, I think. Same thing again. If you've got gloves, wear gloves, because you do get very, very messy with this. Plenty of ink. If you haven't got gloves, as I know they're at a premium at the moment, what you could do is hang on to the end with tweezers. Right, hold of our leaf again, and I've got a fairly big leaf which I'm going to put there, so I think I'll go in here. Quite a jaunty angle. And again, press down really, really, really well, especially around the edges and down the vein in the middle, because that'll be the bit that won't take ours. And that's a nice print. Again, up to the ink. Now I don't think I'll have enough ink on that one to do another print. I could have, we'll see. What I might do is just put it just tiny little bit on here and have a go. We might not get a print. I'm going to put other leaves on the top of this. This is just a background, so yeah, no, it's not a great print, but it doesn't matter. We could always print over the top of that and you wouldn't notice. This is the one, the biggest leaf. It takes a bit of hanging on to while you ink it up, because it's quite fragile, because it's a lot softer leaf. And as it's wilted, it's actually gone flatter, which could be quite good. Put the lid on, this will take a little bit of doing. So I've got quite a big space here. So I'm just going to get hold of this. It's wilted, it's not going to be the easiest thing. And again, as I say, you could use tweezers. Now that's not perfect, but I'm going to go with it. If I try and move it, it might leave marks, so, and as you can see, it's coming through to the back of the leaf is the ink, because it's quite a fragile leaf. And there we are, that's a really nice print. So these fragile leaves, as they get more wilted, you actually get more of the leaf in contact with your paper, with the ink on. So it's actually really good sometimes. Got a bit of a gap there, so I think I will possibly, this is a different leaf. It's quite a interesting shape, I suppose you'd say. Now there's a big blob of ink there, but we'll put quite a lot on both sides. Let's see if we can get a good print. I've done a couple of these before and they have turned out quite well. So, because it's got quite a lot of black on it, that print there that wasn't very good will probably obscure it. way. So again, you're just pressing, and you can hear the crunch because this one I haven't printed with before. So the crunch is the middle vein which is being compressed so that the ink on the sides of the leaves will be in contact. Oh no, that's quite dramatic, but it's really quite nice. If you think, oh, I'm not so sure, it's a bit too much, don't worry, because what we're going to do, this is going to be the background. Just put my lid on my ink. I have all these leaves that I've printed and coloured, and I'm going to add these on the top so that it is a lot of leaves, some showing in the background and some raised up, because I might put some onto foam pads. That's a really good print, so I'm going to leave that so it shows quite a lot. So I quite like the placement of that. It's quite random, but what I could do is mount a sentiment on a paler piece of this, and then it'll show up because it's pale against quite all the dark colours. So this is just a bit of scrap from the background, from the edges. So if you can imagine a sentiment on there, or even there, wherever, it'll show up quite well, and possibly something like a dark sentiment, like a dark brown one. Probably something, don't know, but anyway, quite a dark one anyway. Maybe a black sentiment on a pale background would show quite well. So I'll just get some foam pads. You don't have to stick your foam pads all the way along your leaf, because as long as part of it is, I quite like the fact that it's partly off and it's sort of raised up. So I'm going to put my foam pads where I want my leaf and then attach my leaf to my foam pads. So I want my leaf there, I'm going to put my foam pad on first. Put that on there. This one I'm going to quite a big foam pad because it wants to be about there. And I know you're covering some of your background up, which you spent time doing, but it's there, and that you never quite know which bit you're going to need. That bit. Now some of these, I've inked the edges just with a little bit of black to make them stand out, especially this pale one, because it really was quite pale, but if I ink the edges it makes it stand out from the background. So I'll have that one there. And don't worry about these bits that aren't on the card. We're going to cut those off. It's a fairly plainish bit where the leaf ended. So this is the dandelion one that I only got part of a print because it didn't work so well. I would recommend when you first start doing these leaf prints that you do a sheet of leaf prints to get used to the technique, and do like this and cut them out, because you will get some failures. I still get failures because it just depends on the leaf, and sometimes it just needs to wilt a bit before you can print with it. So I'm going to turn it onto the back, and then you see we've got all these little bits that you can just cut off level to the edge of the card, because you don't need those. Just lining my scissors up with the edge of the card and then cutting. Don't throw these away because you never know what little bits you might need. Don't think I'll need those. Part of that might come in quite handy sometime for coming across a corner, which would be quite nice. Like that. Or like if you wanted to hide a little bit of the really dark one, something like that. In fact, I might do that. So I'll cut that bit off. A little bit of foam pad, because it is quite a bold one, is that. The good thing is I've got another piece of bold here, quite a strong one there, so it works. So we need to make sure that we're just using the bit that is not a straight edge. And put that away again. You can always use these little bits in masterboards. So that is now ready to go on my card. It's got quite a lot of bits that stand up. I actually like that. As I say, possibly a sentiment there or there. I'll decide later, but that is ready just to go on a card blank, and it looks quite nice. So that's basically your background with your leaf prints, and your leaf prints which you've cut out and coloured, mounted onto a card. So that's another idea.